pretty interesting, but after seeing the deck, I got some 3 or 4 thoughts running in my head.
Right.
Is it always necessary to have a David versus Goliath approach in this kind of study, or it is in general life in challenging status quo can be in other, for example, take brands like Virgin or let's say Red Bull or IKEA, even they have to challenge status quo on an ongoing basis, isn't it? So should we always look at David versus Goliath?
You know, my own experience, I mean, I can't answer it. I mean, there's no empirical study to support it. But my own evidence has been that if you can't, if you can create a very loyal clientele, which means in this approach, if this approach helps you to create a loyal clientele, which it does, then you have a very sustainable business proposition. The company of size of ITC, it's pretty simple for us to get 7, 8, 9% market share with the kind of distribution muscle you have, etc., etc. But if you want to really grow over that, grow larger, and you know, then become in the face of the fact that we are not the first in the market. Where we are first, we can do different things. But where we are not, then to counter competition, there is an element of differentiation, whether we call it David versus Goliath or whatever battle it needs to be. I have very rarely found, and many of our, while I've talked about a few products, there are 70 or at least 60% of our products which are facing in a headlong battle where we've not, ours are not particularly differentiated products either. But I've always found that when we go for a strategy of differentiation, there is a risks are high, but the rewards are equally compelling. Okay, and that's the only reason. It's not possible to do it always. As I said, we didn't choose to be in business to be in this paradigm or create a business model out of it. But fact that you're late or you're the nth guy into the business, you will confront with these realities.
That is the next logical next question is about the diversity of this country. I mean, you still have people who don't have electricity at one part of the world. You have somebody else who's got a very evolved living conditions. Will there ever be a David and a Goliath in a country like India? For us to have a...
You're right. Now what you're talking about micro-segmenting and many Indias, I see as a great trend happening going ahead. Today, whether that trend exists or not in many categories is debatable. But going ahead, yes, there is a huge trend. That's why I said, in the Indian context, taking on something which is well entrenched is not as much as taking on a very well entrenched, developed and mature markets where growth rates are necessarily 2 or 3%, where most of the segments have been exploited, where you really need thought leadership alone to create segments. So in India, it's still comparatively easy. We can go for it, and if we collaborate well as with all our media partners, etc., etc., and all of us can collaborate and get ideas, it's great for the consumer.
Right.
Okay, but there is no denying what you're saying is right.
Especially in foods as a category where habits don't die hard as much as in any other thing. Let's take categories like Nestle and Maggi and Kellogg's and breakfast cereals and Amul and butter. I mean, how do you manage such behemoth brands, which is standing for a category and on a habit itself? And your any thoughts on how can you dislodge?
Fundamentally, I think it's possible, first of all, to brand anything, and we've done it pretty successfully in Atta. I've not talked about it, but therefore it's possible to even brand a commodity, provided there is a certain value proposition which is available and communicated to the consumer. When you're taking a large brand in a space which is like 95% control, which is what you're talking about, then you have to, in my opinion, whatever else you may do, for a sustainably long fight, then you have to fight out on certain attributes and certain segmentation which needs to be a little different. If you want to go for a head-on confrontation, head-on in the sense that you want to really talk about the mainstream consumer and not take niches or take regional competition, regional shares. If you're taking an all-India position, then you have to have the ability to and the insight, which I think is a great thing, for discovering or unearthing certain attributes which the product consumers desire and the product is not serving. And it's let me tell you, it's very difficult to get that insight. It's not easy, but you have to observe the consumer, go to his house, see how they're using it, keep talking about it. Some people can do it much easier, some can't. Fortunately, we have some who've been able to get through this. Observe how a consumer, so the red idea of a masala we got because we found that a lot of kids like noodles with sauce, with ketchup, but they didn't like the tanginess of it.
Right.
They liked the color of it, didn't like the tanginess. Mothers said that I can't give noodles for lunch, although it's a great product. I can't give it for lunch because it gets too lumpy. So there is an opportunity segment which is waiting there. Then there was this thing about, children find it too. They only said that, why can't we make it a little long? Okay, many mothers said that, my child doesn't want me to break the block of noodles. So from the bits and pieces, if you can actually create certain differentiations and communicate those differentiations so that they come to life and assume a role which is more important than probably they ever were supposed to be, and create the differentiation in the mind of the consumer by communicating with them across media, then some of these things will happen. Okay, otherwise, in a category like this, if you go with our absolute Me Too, you'd feel there have been about 17 or 18 competitors, including some multinationals who've gone head on in the last 25 years trying to do it. I can name some of them. And they failed to even get a 1% market share after a 12-month period. For us, the jury is still out. Right. We can't claim that we've begun well. But at least the approach was right. The rest is up to how we sustain that approach. But fundamentally, people are then looking at differentiation.
One last question from me before we can throw it onto the floor. How important do you think this social media and this talkability thing for foods brands specifically in challenging the competition?
I think it's going to be an extremely important category, especially for our youth-centric brand. So whether it's the whole social media through Twitter, Facebook, and the equivalent, we certainly see a great role for it in the snacks category. India is a country of tremendous anomaly. There is a badge value for a particular brand, and when you see a household panel data, you get surprised. For snacks, for instance, 5 rupee snacks, which is all of 15 grams of snacks. You would imagine it's on-the-go consumption.
That's right.
But when you really see household panel data, you realize 70% of the consumption is in households. Okay, be that as it may, there are youth-centric products in India in foods, youth-centric brands, and I think for them, social media is not only a means of communicating, getting ideas, but a means of co-creating in terms of not only the product, but the message. Okay, if you can do it well, and we are very serious about it. We are also experimenting in it. I think along the line, we'll also make some horrible errors, but it's something which I think in 5 years, 6 years, is going to be huge.
And I will leave it onto the floor for questions.
I am Shivaji Rao Sai Baba from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Post-lunch session is very interesting because I lost my sleep, be moody, by listening to you because the presentation is very spicy. I am putting like that. Risky is challenge, challenge is risky. If you see that today the present marketing situation, what you explained, that about noodles circulation, the motivation, could you agree 3 flavors transforming into 6 fruits or not? 3 flavors transforming into the 6 fruits, seeing the sustainability, the presently contemporary sustainability. Do you agree, disagree? Your reactions, please.
I didn't get the question. I think it's about the 3 flavors and how it's going to...
The way you presented about the noodle circulation, especially this is the complex situation in the urban market. But rural market you never seen. Keeping the rural market as a risky challenge as risky, if you see that tomorrow as a productive thoughts which you are expecting in your hypothesis, that could you agree that I am putting a metaphor like that? 3 flavors transforming into the 6 fruits.
Transforming into?
6 fruits.
Fruits.
Fruit.
What? 3 flavors and 6 fruits.
Wheat flour.
3 flavors. Today your imagination is 3 flavors. But tomorrow or day after tomorrow, the sustainability will live there. Could you see the 6 fruits?
6 fruits. He's talking about today we have 3 flavors. And tomorrow we have any fruit flavors? 6.
I'm not able to get the tenor.
Somebody can help me out, it'll be good.
Yeah. I think we can talk offline, maybe.
Any other questions, please?
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, good afternoon. So I want to ask you a new entrant, like in your case, a noodle, the ITC noodle. How difficult it is for them to create a name when people usually resemble noodle as Maggi? So how difficult it is for you to create that name that to make people forget or at least segregate noodle as noodles and not just as Maggi name. If I think about noodles, I'll think the shopkeeper will say, okay, I'll give you Maggi. So how difficult it is for you to change the shopkeeper's mind from Maggi to just a noodle or ITC noodles?
I think fundamentally it is depending on whether we put the cart before the horse or horse. When we get into a market, I think fundamentally if we start wanting to achieve the last objective first, we can run into problems. So therefore, if I define my objective is that Maggi should not be synonymous with noodles and Yippee should become synonymous, the task would be monumental. I won't even attempt it. It is essential to realize that I've just planted a seed and I need to flower it. And when the flower comes out, depending on how well I nurture the whole plant, the flower will also be good or bad, depending on that. Therefore, what we want to first do is in this entire category, which costs the consumer 10 rupees for each experience, can I create a differentiation for him or her to seek and go and, experiment? And then decide for herself on basis of whatever taste you provide or other parameters, whether it's worth it repeating that experience or not. Today it's not my mission to dislodge Maggi from being synonymous to noodle. It will never be. I have a simple task on hand. I have a certain capacity. I have a certain PBIT margin to make. How do I do it best with simple ideas which make consumers buy it? In the face of the fact that I've known that in the last 25 years, very few people have succeeded. So something foolhardy I'm trying, but I want to try it with small objectives first. So that's how I see it.
This one on the back.
Hi, good afternoon. I have this very specific question. You talked about the importance of social media, and we run a social media marketing company. Yeah, we run a social media marketing company. My question is that how do you measure the impact that social media has, let's say, on a challenger brand vis-a-vis a more established brand? So I just want to know of how is the impact measured by, a challenger brand in specific and maybe, an established brand in general of the utilization of social media in their overall marketing strategy.
How do you
measure the impact of social media and talkability on the challenger brand versus the lead brand?
Well, fundamentally, nobody has ever been able to link up. When I keep asking our marketing guys, the guy who handles Bingo, for instance, when I say, okay, you got so many followers on your website, now what has it done to sales? So the first thing he says is a very unfair question. Okay, so nobody's been able to do that very well. It is just that we all believe, and very intuitively, that if it leads to a very positive word of mouth, it'll have a positive rub-off on the brand. Whether it'll directly impact your sales immediately in the near future, I think is not the question. The question is, this is becoming an important media. If you're not going to control it, even then it's going to be important. So you might as well participate in it, gain from it, create a positive buzz around it, because if you don't do it, it in any case will create a buzz of its own, if it is of any relevance, if the brand is of any relevance. I think to farm results out of a media like this will take us a little while. But from a point of view of gaining followership, getting ideas of what you need to do, co-creating product and messages, it's a terrific idea. And if we are missing out on this experiment, see, for instance, in my company now, all the salespeople and all the people who are on the field, like including me, we have a particular target of talking to a certain number of consumers. Okay, and if we multiply that into 365, what social media can get you those kind of interactions in 5 and 7 and 10 days?